1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very good. Wonderful. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so, oh my goodness, those lights are so bright. Let me see if I can't see any of you now. I can't see any of you now. Let me see if I can find a place where I can see somebody. I think some people are out there. Yes, you're out there. Now I can see you. Okay, so the first thing that is going to happen is that you are going to fall asleep because you just had lunch. Okay? And now I can see you and I will know who falls asleep. The interpreters tell me that I need to speak a little bit more slowly. Interpreting simultaneous is very difficult. I have done it and it is very difficult. So can we give a round of applause to the interpreters, please? I was worried she might not translate that, but she did, apparently. Okay, so. Okay.
It's better for us if you stay in the middle.
Okay. I have to stay in the middle. I can see absolutely no one. And so you can fall asleep without my knowing it. Okay, so let me get the microphone and the thing in the correct hands. Okay, compliance is, first of all, do any of you have children that are old enough to clean their own rooms? Anybody have children like that? Have you ever told your child to clean his or her room? And did it happen? Have you ever tried to tell anybody to stop smoking? And did it happen? Probably not, right? Compliance is defined as the extent to which patients do what we want them to do. And there are various aspects of compliance. People can be compliant with norms to seek evaluation and treatment. For example, a woman who finds a lump in her breast knows that she should seek an evaluation of it. What? I can see. They need to do something with the microphone? Okay. Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay, so before we continue, I do want to give the interpreters, the translators, a small heart attack. This is my normal rate of speech. This is how I usually talk, and this is how I usually gesticulate. But they told me that if I do that, they're going to die. And I would hate to have their death on my conscience. So I will speak slowly, and I will still try to be exciting. Okay, so a woman who has a lump in her breast knows that she's supposed to seek evaluation of that. So are women compliant with that norm? Also, do people behave well in the clinical setting? Most adults do, some don't, and some children do not. They are not compliant with norms of behavior in the clinical setting. The one that interests us most is the third one up here, and that is, do people follow our recommendations between sessions? Do they do what they're supposed to do between sessions? Obviously, compliance is important because if we have a good idea of what will make somebody better, but they don't do it, they're not going to get better. So there is a caution. A lot of people, including myself, we don't like the term compliance, which your translators are, I'm sure, translating as adherencia right now. We also have the term adherence. I don't think that improves much. The implication with these terms is that we have a top-down model. Doctor tells patient what to do, and patient does it. There's no interaction in this model. An alternative term that people have proposed is concordance. Are people concordant with what we would like them to do? And have they helped us to decide what they should be doing? Are we deciding together? Or are we just a hierarchy in which the top part tells the bottom part what to do? And actually, in adjusting this presentation yesterday, I discovered a new term that I really like, and the term is engagement. Are patients engaged in the program that we think will be helpful for them? Another caution before we start talking about the actual literature has to do with measuring compliance. And I'm going to use the term compliance simply because most of the literature that I'm familiar with used that term. So I don't want to change terms. But if you're going to do research on compliance, there is a challenge in measuring it, okay? So if I want to know if my patients did their homework, how am I going to know whether they did or didn't? If we want to know if somebody is taking their pills, how are we going to know if they did or didn't? So that is a challenge in this research. Recently, people have been using electronic or digital monitoring. We have used this in 2 quite large studies that we have conducted, where a couple of times a week we send random emails to patients. So they click on a link which takes them to a secure site where their exercises exist. So I will have maybe recorded their exercises. They use headphones and they repeat after me and they send their exercises back to me. And in that way I know on that day, in that moment, what they actually did. It's kind of cool. Okay, so let's talk about factors affecting compliance. First of all, there are disease factors. And an important disease factor is how severe does the patient consider the problem to be. And this is a classic. You might have, many of you have probably had a patient, maybe an adult truck driver or something, who comes to you, is referred to you for voice therapy because he is very, very hoarse. But he actually went to the doctor to make sure he didn't have cancer. And he's really not all that concerned. For him, the hoarseness is not a severe problem. And he might not be very compliant. But you might have a soprano who has a glorious voice, who is having difficulty hitting her very, very high notes, maybe high E flat above high C, and for her the problem is very severe. So when people consider their problem to be severe, they are more likely to be compliant. Another disease factor has to do with duration of illness. The longer a disease has existed, the less likely people are to be compliant. This is seen, for example, in one study on anorexia. And why would that be? Well, if they've had the disease for a long time, they might have tried different treatments that didn't work, and they have become discouraged, or they have accepted the diagnosis, they have accepted that this is now who they are, and so they may tend to be less compliant. Patient variables.
Los variables de los pacientes.
And it's interesting.
Depende del género.
Tendemos
a pensar que las mujeres son más comprometidas, pero en la literatura que ha visto esto, los géneros son iguales en cuanto al compromiso, o incluso los hombres son más comprometidos que las mujeres, lo cual parece extraño, pero esta es mi interpretación. Las mujeres somos socializadas para cooperar y asegurarnos de que todos se sientan bien consigo mismos. Así nos socializamos. Ya sea algo genético o sea otra cosa. Y los hombres, no quiero decir más agresivos, pero ser más ir hacia el frente.
Is that a lot of my female patients, my women patients, say, "Oh yes, I'll do that. That's such a good idea." And then they walk out the door and think, "I'm not doing that. That's stupid." But I don't know where things stand. Whereas men, in my experience, on average, are more likely to be in your face, right? Like, that's stupid. I'm not doing that. Well, I'm glad you said that.
Bueno, me alegro que dijera eso. Ahora podemos hablar de eso.
So that's my interpretation.
Entonces, esa es mi interpretación.
Age doesn't really matter
La edad no importa.
that much systematically for compliance. If you get older, you're not more or less compliant
eres
on
mayor no
average.
significa que eres más comprometido,
Other
¿no?
variables have to
Otras
do,
variables
patient variables have to do
tiene
with
que ver
race
con la
and
raza
ethnic group.
y los
In
grupos
one
étnicos.
study, it
En un estudio
appeared
aparece
that black
que
women
las mujeres
didn't
negras
use mammography
no
as
usaron
often
la
as white
mamografía
women.
tanto como
However,
la
when the
mujer es
researchers went
blanca,
back in
pero
and they
cuando
controlled
volvieron y
for
controlaron
income and education,
en cuanto a la
then all of a
educación,
sudden the groups
entonces
were the
los
same.
grupos
Of
eran
course,
los
the
mismos.
color of your skin
Obviamente
cannot
el
make a
color de la
difference
piel
in these
no va a
kinds
hacer una
of
diferencia
issues.
en este tipo de asuntos.
However, there was a study
Sin
that was
embargo, hubo un
conducted
estudio
by
que
a
fue
former doctoral student of mine.
conducido por un doctor
Her
amigo
name was
mío,
Elise White,
era
and
Alice
she was a
White,
gospel singer
y era una
and also a
cantante
speech
de música
pathologist. She
cristiana
came from
y
Mississippi
vino
in
de
the south of the
Mississippi
United
al
States.
sur de
And
Estados
she was
Unidos.
very frustrated
Y ella
because
estaba muy
in her
frustrada
gospel
porque
choir,
en su coro
more than half of the
más de
people,
la
the
mitad
singers, were
de los
hoarse.
cantantes eran,
And she would tell them, go to
y
the
les decía que
doctor, get it
vayan
evaluated, get a
al doctor, que se
treatment.
traten por
And
su
one of their
voz.
first
Y una de
responses
sus
was
primeras respuestas
typically
fue típico
that actually they
que-
felt that their hoarseness was a
que su dolor
sacrifice
era
to
un
God.
sacrificio a Dios.
So they were a
Entonces,
sacrificial
era-
lamb. Their voice was a
Su
sacrificial
voz era
lamb.
un
And it was a
sacrificio
sign
para
of
ellos y
prestige.
era
Okay?
un
I am
signo de
willing to
prestigio.
harm
Estoy
myself
dispuesto
for
a hacerme
God.
daño para
But the
Dios.
more common
Pero
response, or
la
as
respuesta más
common
común
response, was,
era,
why would I go to a doctor?
¿por qué voy a ir a un
He
doctor?
or she doesn't even know
Él
me.
o ella no me
If I
conoce.
have a health
Si
problem,
tengo un
I'm going
problema
to
de
go to
salud,
my grandmother.
voy a ir donde
She
mi abuela.
knows me, and
Ella
I
me
know
conoce
she cares
y sé
about
que
me.
ella
So
se
Elise,
preocupa
my
por mí.
student, was very frustrated by
Entonces
this and
ella
wanted to do
estaba
a
muy
study, which she
frustrada por
did.
esto y hizo un
And
estudio sobre esto.
Actually, she did a survey of
Y
two fairly large choirs.
Hizo
One was a
un
gospel
estudio
choir
de
of
dos coros.
mostly
Uno era
black singers
de cantantes
in
negros
Mississippi,
en
and the
Mississippi,
other
y
choir
el otro
was
coro
a classical singing
era
choir,
coro de
mostly
música
of
clásica.
white people.
La mayoría eran
And she
blancos.
surveyed them
Y
to
les
find out
hizo
how many
una
felt that they had a
encuesta
voice
y
problem on
vieron a
that
ver si
day.
tenían un problema con su
50%
voz.
of the
Ese
gospel
día,
singers said that they
el
did. I'm going to
50%
walk over here
de la
every once in a
música
while just to
gospel
see the
dijeron que
time.
sí.
Okay, maybe I can
Voy a
hold
ver
this
la
in my
hora.
hand, so I can stay on track.
Así puedo estar
So
en
50%
el
of the gospel singers
El
said that they had a voice
50%
problem
de
that
la
day,
música gospel
and
dijeron que les
30%
dolía
of the
y
classical
el
singers
30%
said that they
de
had
la
a
música
problem.
clásica dijeron que
And
tenían
she
un
was
problema.
interested
Y ella
in
estaba
looking at
interesada
what
en
were
ver
factors
cuáles
that
eran
might
los factores
predict
que podrían
whether
predecir
these singers
si estos
would seek
cantantes
treatment.
iban
First
a ir a
of all, she
buscar algún
predicted that on
tratamiento.
average,
Predijo que
the
en un
African
promedio
American singers
los
would not
cantantes
seek treatment,
afroamericanos
but the
no
white
iban a
singers
buscar
would.
tratamiento, pero los
And
blancos sí.
that was borne out on a
Y
scale from
en una
negative
escala
3 to
de
positive
negativo-
3.
de negativo,
On average, the African
3
American
y
singers said that they
positivo
were
3, y
likely
dijeron que
not to seek treatment.
los
And the white
negros
singers
dijeron
had
que no
2
iban a
on
buscar
average.
tratamiento
They were
y en
slightly
promedio los
likely
blancos
to
dijeron que
seek
en una
treatment. So
escala de
that
2
prediction
iban a
of hers
buscar
was relatively
y
borne
esa
out. But she was particularly
predicción
interested
fue muy
in a
interesante de parte de
regression, a
ella.
mathematical regression
Fue una
model
regresión
proposed by
matemática
Aston and,
propuesta-
I did it again.
lo hice otra vez.
Aston and Fishbein, okay, that says that the
Que dice
behavior
que
or
el
the intention
comportamiento
to
o la
seek
intención de
treatment
buscar
can be
tratamiento puede
predicted
ser
by an individual's
predicho
feelings
por los
about seeking
sentimientos del
treatment.
individuo en buscar tratamiento.
So again, on a scale
Entonces,
from
en una
negative
escala
3 to
de
positive
menos
3,
3
how do
a
you
más 3,
feel
cómo
about
tú te
seeking
sientes en
treatment?
buscar
And
tratamiento.
also
Y
what
también
the social norms are. What
las
do
normas
other
sociales
people
hay.
in your
¿Qué
environment
dice
think you
la
should
persona
do?
alrededor tuyo?
Negative
Dicen
3,
que te
I
tienen que
don't
decir.
think that my
Menos 3
social
dice
environment,
que
they
mi
think I should not seek
ambiente
treatment.
social
Positive
dice
3
que
is
no,
in my social
y
environment, they
más
think I
3 me
should
dicen
seek
que sí,
treatment.
debo buscar
And what was
tratamiento. Y
interesting
lo que fue
was that this
interesante es
model
que este
turned
modelo
out to
terminó
be correct for
ser
both
correcto
African American
para los
and white
afroamericanos
Caucasian singers.
y los cantantes blancos,
But in the opposite way.
pero en
In the sense
modo
that, I
opuesto.
think this is kind of moving up, okay? For the African
Para el
Americans, the
afroamericano,
self factor did not
el-
predict whether they would seek treatment at all.
el factor
But
de
the
ellos
social
era
factor
no
did.
buscar
In other
ayuda,
words, if
pero el
people in my
factor social dijo
environment
que
think
sí.
that I should
Si la
seek treatment,
gente social
I
me
am
dice que
likely
tengo
to
que
do
buscar
so. But
tratamiento,
if
es
people in my
probable que lo haga,
environment think I
pero si
shouldn't
mi
seek treatment, I'm
ambiente
likely
es
not
gente que me
to.
rodea
So
me
the
dice que no,
social
probablemente
environment
no lo
was
haga.
very important in
Entonces
this
la
sample.
gente que me
For
rodea
the
era muy
Caucasians,
importante.
we had the
Con
opposite.
los blancos fue lo
Their
opuesto.
own personal feelings
Su
about seeking
sentimiento personal
treatment
de buscar
predicted whether
tratamiento
they
se
would,
predijo que
but the
lo
social
harían,
factor did
pero
not,
el factor
not at
social dijo
all.
que no.
So, and this is typical, I
Y
think,
esto
of
es típico
American culture, which
en
is
la
very
cultura
much
americana,
about me,
que es
very much a me culture. And
mayormente
this is
se
falling
trata
a
de
little bit
mí,
again.
de alguien
Let
individual.
me see if I can get it back there, or I'll just let it slip, I guess. So it's all about me.
Entonces todo
If
se
I
trata de
think I
mí,
should do something,
de
I'm
si
going
yo
to do
creo
it.
que tengo que
The
hacer algo,
social
lo voy a
factor
hacer,
had
pero el
no
factor social
ability
no
to
tenía
predict
habilidad
what
para
a person
predecir
was going to
lo que una
do.
persona
My
iba a
mother
hacer.
thinks I
Mi
should go
mamá
see a
cree que
doctor,
debo ir al
and that's going to
médico
make me go
y
see a
eso
doctor.
me va a hacer
I
ir al
don't think
médico,
so.
no lo creo.
So the observation
Entonces, la
is not so
observación
much a fixed
no
one
es
on
algo
black people
que se ve
or white
en la
people in the
gente
United
negra o la
States,
gente blanca en
as it
Estados
is
Unidos, como
a
es
caution for us
como
that sometimes
que
people might
algo
seem
que no
to
está
not
consciente
be
nosotros que
compliant with what we
no
want them
somos
to do,
comprometidos con lo
but
que
it's
quieren que
not
hagan,
necessarily,
pero no es necesariamente
there may be other factors
quizás
that are
hayan otros
feeding into
factores que
that,
están
cultural
alimentando a
factors,
ese
social
factor social
factors that we are
o
not
cultural que
recognizing.
no estamos
So I'm sure
reconociendo.
you have the same
Entiendo que
phenomenon
ustedes
that we
tienen el
do
mismo
and
fenómeno que
everybody in the
nosotros
world
y todo
has.
en el mundo lo
Children
tienen.
do or
Niños
don't do their
hacen o no
homework
hacen sus tareas
in part
en
based on the
parte
home
basado
environment
en
they
el ambiente
have.
de la casa.
If their parents
Si
value
sus padres
school and homework, they're more likely to
valoran
do
el
their
colegio, es muy
homework.
probable que
If
lo
their
hagan.
parents don't
Si sus
value
padres
school
no
and homework, they're
valoran
less
su
likely to
tarea,
be
es
compliant
poco
with
probable
that
que lo hagan y se
suggestion from the
comprometan
school.
con eso.
Patient's educational level, if somebody
nivel
is
de
well
educación, si
educated,
es
this
alguien
does
que está
not
bien
predict them
educado,
being more compliant or
de ser
less
más comprometido
compliant.
o
There's
menos
really no
comprometido,
systematic effect.
no hay un efecto
And
sistemático.
actually there have been
Y
some anecdotal
han
suggestions
habido
that people
sugerencias
who are well
anecdóticas que
educated
las
tend
personas
to be
bien
less
educadas tienden a
compliant,
ser
if
menos
anything,
comprometidas
because they think they know
porque creen que
everything,
saben todo,
right?
¿cierto?
Oh, I know what to do.
Yo sé lo que tengo que
I
hacer.
don't care what my doctor
Yo no
says. I know
estoy
what
ni
I'm
ahí con lo
supposed
que
to
dice el
do.
doctor.
Another patient variable
Otro
has to
pas-
do with
otro
income.
variable
It
tiene que
turns
ver
out that
con
people who are
la
really,
entrada.
really rich
Y las
and
personas que
people
tienen
who are
mucho,
unemployed tend to be
dinero
more
y
compliant
o
than
la
the rest of
gente
us.
que
Well,
es
why
más
would
pobre
that
tienden a
be?
ser más
Maybe the
comprometidos.
rich
¿Por qué
people
será?
have good
Quizá
insurance, they can pay for
los
it.
que
Maybe they can
ganan
pay
bien,
for the cab to get there
tienen
during
buen
their lunch
seguro
break.
y
They can pay for the
pueden pagar
babysitter. But what about the
por una niñera,
unemployed?
pero las personas que son
Unemployed have a lot of
desempleadas
time on their hands,
tienen
and
mucho
that
tiempo en
makes
sus
us
manos y
rethink
eso
some of
no
our
hace
therapy models.
repensar
If
en
we're
nuestros
asking
modelos
people to spend a
que
lot of
pasen
time
mucho
doing
tiempo
their voice
haciendo su
exercises,
ejercicio
they
de
might
voz,
risk poor
probablemente
compliance.
sean más comprometidos.
Geography can make
La
a
geografía
difference.
también puede hacer
Rural
una gran
geography
diferencia.
tends to have less
Tiende
a poorer compliance than
a ser
urban,
poco
and this
comprometido
might be
que
related
la
and certainly
urbana.
is related often to transportation.
Y
Can
si
you
eso se
get
refiere
to the
al
hospital?
transporte,
Can you get to
puedes
the
llegar
clinic?
al
I
hospital
had
o
a
a la
caseload
clínica.
in St. Louis,
Yo
a
tengo
bunch
en
of
San
people,
Luis una
patients from
cantidad de
north of the
personas que
city,
son del
which
norte de
was
la
a
ciudad,
very poor section
que era
of the
una
city,
parte muy pobre
and they
de,
just
de
weren't
la
coming
ciudad
to therapy
y no venían
very
a terapia
often, and I
muy
couldn't
a
figure
menudo
it
y no
out.
entendía
I
por
knew
qué.
they didn't have
Sabía que no
cars to
tenían
get
autos
there, and they couldn't
en
pay
el
for
cual podían
parking
llegar
anyway,
y pagar
but
el
I finally
estacionamiento.
asked one of them, there was a
Pero cuando les
bus that
pregunté,
came
había
from
un
that
bus que
neighborhood
venía
right to
de
the
ese
hospital. And I asked a
vecindario
woman, I
directamente al
said,
hospital
what's the
y les
problem
dije
here?
cuál es
Because
el
she kept
problema,
telling me on the
porque
phone
ella me
she
decía por
loved
teléfono
therapy.
que le
And she
encantaba la
finally
terapia
said, I
y
don't have bus
finalmente dijo,
money.
no tengo
Right?
dinero para el
I
bus.
don't know how
Y no
the
sé,
situation is in Chile, but
no sé
in the
cómo
United
es acá en
States,
Chile, pero
transportation can cost quite a
el
lot, public
transporte en Estados
transportation.
Unidos
So
cuesta
we arranged
bastante.
for a
Entonces
hospital
arreglamos
bus, a
un
company
bus,
bus,
una
to go
compañía
pick
que
them
los
up
fuera
on
a buscar
Tuesdays. I had
los
8 or 9
martes,
of them
tenía 8 o
that
9
day on Tuesday,
en
and
ese
the bus
día,
just went
y el
back and
bus
forth, and all
iba
of
y
a sudden they
volvía
started
y de
showing up.
repente empezaron a
So
aparecer todos los
sometimes the
pacientes.
strangest factors that
Entonces
we
los
don't think
factores
of
que
can
no se nos
really
puede ocurrir
influence patient
realmente
compliance.
influencia el compromiso de los pacientes.
In terms of cognitive and personality and
términos
attitude factors,
de personalidad,
if people
factores de
forget what they're
actitud,
supposed to do,
ellos
they're
a
not
veces se
likely
le
to
olvida
do
lo que
it.
tienen que hacer y
My
no lo
father
hacen.
lived with me the
Mi
last
papá vivió
11 years
conmigo
of
los
his
últimos
life,
11
and
años de
for
su vida
30 years
y
he
por
had been
30 años
insulin
él había
dependent
sido
diabetic. And
insulina
every night when he
dependiente
would come,
y
he
cada
referred
noche
to
él
giving
se
himself his insulin
refería-
shots as shooting himself,
él se
which is sort of
refería a
like a
su,
joke, like I'm going to
su
shoot myself, but this was
inyección
shooting
como que
myself.
se estuviera
And
disparando
every
él
night
mismo.
before
Y
dinner
todas las
he'd
noches
come
antes de
up
cenar
and I
subía
would say,
y
Dad,
yo
did you
diría,
shoot yourself?
papá,
And
te
he'd say,
disparaste.
oh, I forgot.
Oh,
And he'd
¿verdad?
go
Se
back
me
down
olvidó
and
y
shoot
bajaba
himself.
y
So
se
when
disparaba.
people don't remember
Cuando
what
las
they're
personas
supposed to
no
do,
recuerdan lo
that's
que
a
tienen que
problem.
hacer, ese es un
This is
problema.
why it's important
Es
for
por
us
eso
to
que es
write out
importante que
instructions,
escribamos
or
las
increasingly
instrucciones
we
o
give people their
incrementar
instructions on
sus
audio,
instrucciones
so they
en
can
audio
actually have
para
them
que
right there.
realmente
We
lo
give them
tengan
their
ahí mismo,
exercises on audio,
de
so they
mandar
can
su
pop them into
ejercicio
their CD
en
player
audio
while
para
they're
que puedan
making
ponerlo
breakfast
en
or
un
dinner,
CD
and they can do
para
the
mientras
exercises while they're
almuerzan o mientras
living
toman
life,
desayuno o mientras
not
viven la
taking
vida
time
y
out
no
of
tomar
life.
tiempo
Critical.
fuera de la vida.
Some psychiatric conditions
Algunas
may harm
condiciones
compliance,
psiquiátricas
not surprisingly.
no es muy
A
sorprendente.
positive patient attitude, I'm
La
going to deal
actitud
with
de un
this,
paciente positivo dice
positively
yo voy a hacer
predicts
esto.
compliance.
Probablemente se
And
predice el
confidence in the
compromiso
treatment also increases
y también
compliance.
tiene
If
que
they
ver con
feel
el
that we know
tratamiento.
what we're doing
Si ellos
and we
creen que
present to
saben
them
lo que
a
estamos haciendo
program
y
that
presentamos
is
un programa
convincing,
que es
they are more
convincente,
likely to be
están más
compliant
dispuestos a
than
ser
if they don't
comprometidos
have
a
confidence
que
in
no
us
tienen
or in our
confianza en nosotros
programs.
o en nuestros
This is one
programas.
of the reasons that
Esta es
in
una
the
de las
programs
razones
I
que en
have
los programas
developed,
que yo
we
he
develop
desarrollado
manuals for them
hemos hecho
with
manuales
citations and what have
con
you.
citaciones
Most of them do
y
not read the
ejercicios.
scientific
Muchas
papers,
veces
but
no
it's
leen
written
la
there.
parte
It's been published.
científica, pero
It
por lo menos
must
está
be good,
publicado.
right?
Debe
That's
ser
one of the
bueno.
main reasons we
Esa es
do
una de las razones
the
que
manuals.
hacemos los
Let me see
manuales.
how we're doing on time here. Okay, so far so good. There are two variables that
Hay
we're
dos
going to talk
variables que
about
vamos a
next
hablar
that are very
a continuación
important
que son muy
in the
importantes
healthcare literature on
en la
compliance.
literatura
And one
en
of
cuanto al
them is
compromiso
locus
y uno
of
de ellos
control.
es
Where does a
control
person
en la
believe that the
localidad.
control in their
Cuando creen
life
que el
exists?
control
Are
de sus
they in
vidas
control
están
of
en
their
control de
lives,
sus vidas
or is the environment
o
in
es
control
el
of their
ambiente o
lives?
su entorno
And
en
the
control
second
de su vida.
concept we'll
Y el
discuss
segundo
here for a few moments is
concepto es
self-efficacy.
la
And
eficiencia
self-efficacy
propia
is not
y
self-confidence.
no es
It's not
confianza
a
en uno mismo,
personality
no es
trait.
una
It
personalidad,
is one's belief
es lo
in
que
one's
uno cree en
ability
las
to
habilidades
carry out a
para
very
llevar a cabo
specific behavior.
comportamientos
So you can
específicos.
have good self-efficacy,
Entonces
which
puede
I
tener
do
una
for
eficiencia
geometry,
propia en cuanto
and
a
poor
geometría
self-efficacy for
y
trigonometry,
quizás
which
para
is my case,
trigonometría
okay?
quizás
You
es
can
muy
have
pobre.
good self-efficacy
Puedes
for
tener
riding a
eficiencia,
mountain bike and
propia
poor
en
self-efficacy
montar
for
una
riding
bicicleta
a racing
y
bike. Okay,
quizás
so let's
pueden
talk about these two
tener
concepts
lo
here.
contrario en otro
In terms of
medio de
locus of
transporte.
control, this is an interesting one.
Este es algo
Men tend to
interesante. Los
have
hombres
an
tienden a
internal
tener
locus of control
un
for positive
foco
events in their
interno
lives.
que
So they
manejan
get
su
a
vida.
promotion
Entonces
at
tienen
work,
un ascenso
and
en
they
el
say,
trabajo
I
y dicen,
deserved it, it's
"Yo me lo
about
merecí,
time.
ya era tiempo."
But they tend to have
Pero
an
tienden
external
a
locus of
tener
control for bad things in their
un
life.
foco externo
So
cuando
if they
cosas malas
lose
pasan.
their job,
Pero, por ejemplo,
they're
si
likely to
pierden
say,
su
my
empleo,
boss is an
dicen,
idiot,
"Mi
right?
jefe
It's
es
my
un
boss's
idiota."
fault.
Culpa del
Women
jefe.
tend,
Las
on
mujeres
average, to have the opposite.
de
If
hacer lo
something
opuesto.
good happens
Si
to
algo
us,
bueno
we
nos
tend
pasa,
to attribute it to
podemos
an
atribuirlo
external locus,
a un
and that
foco
is if a
externo.
woman gets a
Si una
promotion,
mujer
how
tiene
many
un
times
ascenso,
have you heard
¿cuántas
this?
veces
I
has
have heard it a
escuchado esto?
million
Yo lo he
times.
escuchado muchas
My
veces.
family is just so
Mi
understanding.
familia
My
me
coworkers
comprende,
are
mis
so
compañeros de trabajo
supportive.
son,
My
me apoyan,
children are
mis hijos
behind me.
están
My
detrás de
parents
mí,
were so
mis
loving
padres
when they raised me.
me
But
criaron
when
muy
something bad
cariñosamente,
happens to
pero
us,
cuando
we
algo
tend
malo
to
nos
have an
pasa,
internal
tendemos
locus
a
of
hacer
control.
un foco
So
interno,
you lose your job and you
pierdes tu
say,
trabajo
I
y dices,
knew it,
"Yo
I
sabía,
gained 5 pounds. Okay?
gané 5
And
kilos."
so that
Y
is a little bit of
eso
a
es
gender
un poco
difference.
de la diferencia de
And
género.
self-efficacy on this next page
En esta
is the
próxima
concept that has
página es el
been in
concepto
absolute the most
que ha sido,
researched in all
una
of the
investigación
healthcare
en todo, la parte de
compliance
salud
literature.
en cuanto al
As I
compromiso
just
y la
mentioned,
literatura.
self-efficacy is
En
defined
cuanto a
as
la
one's belief
eficiencia de uno
in
mismo,
one's
es la creencia,
ability
es
to carry
la
out a very
habilidades
specific behavior.
y llevar una
And
conducta
interestingly,
específica.
self-efficacy
Y
can
la
be
eficiencia de uno
manipulated
mismo
by
puede
the
ser
language
manipulada
that
por
we
el
use
lenguaje
in
que
the clinic.
usamos en la clínica.
There was this one study
Hubo un estudio
on women
en las
who
mujeres
were
que
out of shape. They had
estaban
not
fuera de forma,
exercised
que
in
no
a
hacían
very long
ejercicio
time, and
por
they were
mucho tiempo
overweight
y tenían
and had health
sobrepeso y
problems.
tenían problemas de
And these
salud.
women
Y
were
estas mujeres
enrolled
que
in an
estaban-
exercise program.
Hay otras
So
personas
all
que
the women
la
were put on
llevaban
a
un programa
treadmill.
de
And all of
ejercicio
them
y
were
la
hooked
pusieron
up
en una
to a
trotadora.
blood pressure
Y
monitor
le pusieron
cuff,
un monitor
which monitored
de
their
control
blood
de
pressure
presión
and their heart rate.
y su
And there was a
ritmo
cable
cardíaco.
that
Y
went
había un
from
cable
that
que
device
iba de
into
ese
a
aparato
computer screen
a una pantalla de
on their
computador.
individual treadmills.
Ahí en su
Now,
trotadora
it turned
individual.
out that the information
La
they saw
información
on
que
their
ellos
computer
vieron
screen
en las
was
pantallas
completely bogus.
era
It was
realmente
completely,
raro, era
everybody
raro.
got the same
Como
feedback.
todos
So they weren't
recibieron
really
la misma
seeing their
retroalimentación.
actual blood
Entonces no
pressure
estaban
and heart
viendo
rate.
su presión
But
sanguínea o
the
su
experimenters
ritmo
went up to
cardíaco.
some of the women
Pero
and
algunas de
said,
las mujeres
after
dijeron,
5 or 10
después
minutes
de
of
5 o 10
walking on this
minutos de
treadmill,
caminar en esta trotadora,
wow, do you have
wow,
world-class athletes in your
hoy
family? family,
realmente
this is
tienes
a
atletas en tu
phenomenally
familia,
fast,
esto es
great
realmente
cardiovascular response. And to other women, they went up to them after 5 or 10 minutes and said, I don't want to scare you, but are there a lot of men in your family who have, I'm sorry, died prematurely from heart attacks or something? And they would say, oh, I think we need to stop this exercise. I need to speak with your doctor, right? Completely randomly. The people got this feedback completely randomly. And it turned out that the women who had gotten the positive feedback, positive language, increased their self-efficacy for exercise, and the women who had gotten the negative feedback decreased their self-efficacy for exercise. And the corollary is that self-efficacy in the literature has shown to be among the most powerful predictors of compliance. And if somebody believes they can do something, they're likely to do it. If they believe they can't, they're likely not to do it. And as a matter of fact, increasingly, this paradigm of self-efficacy is used in the addiction domain. So, except for people who have alcoholism who are really, really far gone, or smoking, people will be asked, well, what do you want to do, first of all, and what do you think you can do? I can't tell you how many patients I have had who were smokers, and I asked them, they all say, well, I'd like to stop smoking. One of my girlfriends, who is a smoker, when I asked her once, I said, what do you want? She says, I want to stop smoking, right? But at any rate, when I have asked patients, well, okay, so you'd like to stop smoking, what do you think you can do? Oh, I can go from 20 cigarettes to 10. I can do that. And they do. And then they come back in and they say, no, I bet I can do 5. I can't tell you how many patients of mine have quit smoking that way, who I'm pretty sure would not have stopped smoking if I had said, stop smoking, right? So increasingly, the self-efficacy paradigm is used in the addiction population. Hundreds and even thousands of studies have demonstrated this effect in the healthcare literature. We can also talk about self-efficacy for voice in relation to language. One of my former doctoral students did a master's thesis on this concept. I do not like the terms vocal abuse and vocal misuse, okay? They're not nice words. When I had voice problems, it took a long time to get over the voice problems, but it took much longer to overcome the shame that I felt, because so many people down the line, speech pathologist, physician, you name it, told me I had voice problems because I had abused my voice. It's not a nice word. I was doing everything I could to have a good voice, and I abused it, and now I had the punishment, okay? So at any rate, I don't like these terms, and Amanda did her master's thesis on this question. She looked at 14 teachers who had self-declared voice problems. They had never sought evaluation or treatment for them, and they were randomized to one of 2 rooms. In one room, they received a video, educational video, about voice problems using the terms abuse and misuse. In another room, they got exactly the same video by the same person with exactly the same text, except for neutral language was substituted. Emotionally neutral language was substituted for abuse and misuse. And the findings indicated that when those subjects who had received the terms abuse and misuse, for them, self-efficacy for voice was harmed by the use of those terms. And we would predict from that therefore their compliance with therapy and their outcome from therapy would be compromised because of that poor compliance. I'm going to move through a lot of other slides here now, and not. I'm going to talk briefly about one final topic. I have more slides here, but in the interest of catching up with the schedule, I will just talk about this last topic here, which I think is also important. This is a concept that comes to us from a type of therapy that's called motivational interviewing, MI. And according to this framework, people who say they want, According to self-efficacy
De
theory,
acuerdo a la
if someone
eficiencia de
says,
uno
I
mismo,
want to
si
stop
alguien dice que
smoking,
yo quiero parar
or I
de
want
fumar,
to do my voice
o quiero
exercises,
hacer
but
mi
they
ejercicio
don't,
de voces, pero no lo
often
hacen,
people say
por lo general
they
dicen
don't because they
que no
don't
lo hacen
really
porque
want to.
realmente no quieren.
Self-efficacy theory
La
says
eficiencia
they may
en uno
want to, but they don't
dice
think
que
they can. They don't have the
probablemente
time, they don't
quieren
have the
hacerlo, pero
money,
no tienen
they
el
don't
tiempo, no tienen el
understand.
dinero, y esa es la
Motivational
teoría.
interviewing goes
La
one step
entrevista
further, and it
motivacional
says
va
some
un
people
paso
say
más
they
allá.
want to do something,
Aunque
they
una
want to
persona
do
diga
their
que
voice
quieren hacerlo y
exercises,
quieren hacer su
and they
ejercicio
think they
vocal,
can. They have
creen que
okay
pueden y
self-efficacy,
tienen
but
eficiencia
they're
en uno
not
mismo, pero
ready.
no están listos.
So you can find an
Entonces
article
pueden
about
encontrar un
this relative
artículo
to voice
sobre
by Alison
esto
Bierman
de Alice
in
Bierman
AJSLP from a few years ago.
de hace
That's an
unos
image
años
of
atrás.
hers,
Es una
where she
imagen de ella
applies
donde ella
motivational
habla
interviewing to the
con
case
respecto
of
a la
voice
entrevista
therapy. So
motivacional
she
con
walks us
respecto a
through
la
the
terapia
steps of
vocal.
how we might be able to apply that
Y habla un
technique
poco de
in
cómo
our
podemos aplicar
patients who
técnicas en
want
nuestros
to,
pacientes
and
que
they think they
quieren
can,
y
but
creen
they're
que
just
pueden,
not ready.
pero quizás no están listos.
Okay, I think unless there is something else, I'll
ser
just
que haya
mention a
algo
few
más,
other
voy a
things.
mencionar un par
Interestingly,
de cosas.
educating patients
Educando a
about
los
their
pacientes
disease
en
does
cuanto a
not
su enfermedad
necessarily
no
make them more
necesariamente lo
compliant.
hace ser más
If it
comprometidos.
does,
Si lo
there's the
hace,
interesting
está
finding that people
el
understand
encontrar
only
o el
about
entender
half of what we
quizás
tell
la
them,
mitad de lo que
and they
realmente le
forget
decimos,
half
y
of
después se
that
le olvida
on their
la
way
mitad
to the
de eso
parking lot or to the
camino
bus.
al estacionamiento o
So
al bus.
if patient education
Si la educación del
improves
paciente
compliance,
mejora
there are
el
some
compromiso,
data that suggest
hay
that
datos
this
que
is not
sugieren
because
que
people
esto
have
no es porque
understood
ellos
and therefore been
entendieron
motivated,
y por
maybe,
eso son
but maybe
motivados.
not,
Quizás
but
sí, quizás
rather
no,
because they
pero sino
feel
que
that we
se
have
sienten
given
que
them
le
the
hemos dado
respect
el
and the
respeto
time
y el
to
tiempo
give them
para
an
darles
explanation.
una
And I
explicación.
will make a final
Y
comment
voy a
about
hacer
that
un
actual
comentario final con
actual
respecto a
point.
eso.
Well, first of all, before I
Primero
get to
que
that
todo,
final
antes de que
point, the
llegue a
more
ese
things
último
we
punto,
ask people to
mientras
do,
más
the
cosas
less
le
likely
pedimos
they are to
a
do
las
any
personas
of
que
them.
hagan,
That's fairly robust.
probablemente menos cosas van a
So I
hacer
will
de
make
vuelta.
the final comment
Voy a hacer el
that
último
the
comentario
clinician-patient
de que el
interaction
paciente, la
is
interacción entre
compelling.
los
If
pacientes
people
clínicos
like us, if
es
they
que
have a
la-
good rapport
si
with us,
les
they're
gusta
more
estar con
likely to
nosotros,
do
es
what we
muy
say. They're more
probablemente,
likely to think we're competent.
creen que somos
And they're more likely
competentes
to do what we ask them to do than if they don't like us.
hagan
Have you ever been to a
las cosas que
physician
nosotros
who
les
is an
pedimos.
absolute idiot?
Han
I was
ido
going
donde
to
un
use another
fisiólogo
term, but I
que haya
didn't.
sido un idiota.
And you just
Quería ocupar otra
you
palabra,
don't have
pero-
confidence in that
pero, y
person.
si no tienes
But what
confianza en
about a
esa
clinician
persona,
who is
pero
just
un
warm
clínico
and
que
caring and
es
spends
cálido,
extra time with
pasa
you
tiempo
and is
contigo
really present?
y es
That
bastante
clinician
presente.
is likely to get better
Él,
compliance from
probablemente
his or
tenga
her
un mayor
patients than a clinician
compromiso
who
de parte
is
del
cold
paciente que
and
alguien que
aloof.
es frío.
So with that,
Entonces,
I
con eso,
believe that we will
creo que
end to
vamos a
try to
terminar
catch up a
para
little bit on
tratar de
time.
avanzar un
There
poco en el
are
tiempo.
packages of
Hay
therapy
paquetes de
programs
acuerdo
that
a
build a lot of
programas
these
de-
principles of compliance
que
right into the
generan
program.
esta-
And Lesak Madsen, Resonant Voice
estas
Therapy,
ideas y-
Casper
y
Stone,
cosas que hemos estado hablando en
Confidential
estos
Flow
últimos
Therapy, Lee Silverman Voice Treatment are among those that build a
Están
lot of these factors
muchos de
right
estos
into the
factores
therapy
hablan de
programs
eso y
themselves.
nuestro
But I hope
crecimiento
you
en
might
cuanto a
have
la
gotten
parte
a
vocal.
few
Espero que
ideas
hayan
that
tenido un
might
par
be
de
useful
ideas
to
que
you in
puedan
terms
serles
of
útiles a
patient
ustedes en
engagement.
cuanto
And
al
enjoy the next
compromiso
talk.
de los pacientes y disfruten la próxima charla.